We're going to talk about how to build a customer-driven workforce. Jeffrey Gittemeyer said if you put a gun to the heads of your employees and said, recite our mission statement or die, they'd all be dead. I think that a lot of organizations, when we think about how do we create this service-driven workforce, spend a lot of our money on mission statements, and yet very few people really know what they are. In your organization, successful people see themselves from their high points in life. Business has been misled into a strategy that favors investments in machines and financial capital over the investments of people. So if you're going to have a customer-driven workforce, you've got to invest, build, and develop your people. See, the best service pros are just simply outstanding employees. And the only way to find outstanding employees is first you got to recruit them, and then secondly you got to train them, build them, and educate them. Vernon Hill, the founder, president of Commerce Bank, said the strategy is to hire outgoing people pleasers, and then we train, and train. Commerce Bank is the most customer-driven bank, the most convenient bank in America. But they understand with their 11,000 people, you can't just hire the cream, but you've got to educate them and provide them the tools to be more successful. They teach all their employees the SMART principles. Say yes. Takes two to say no. Make each customer feel special. Always keep customer promises. They talk about service recovery. They say to err is human, to recover is divine. And they want every employee to think like the customer. They have tremendous amount of money and effort they spend on building and developing their people to become customer driven. See, the real question at your organization, are your employees trained on principles, or are they trained on policies and rules? Most organizations spend all of their money to teach the employee the policies, the rules, and the procedures. What's more important, principles or rules? Donald Trump said, I think big and it gives me a big advantage. I'm never satisfied. I don't know if I'm capable of being satisfied. Wouldn't it be great if we could build some of that ego, some of that self-worth that Donald Trump has in our own employees? You see, the only way your organization can hope to compete is to employ high-performance people. And in that process, this is what we're going to get into now, is training is the key to empowerment. Empowerment is the key to creating a service culture. I have found that when we talk about building and developing people, is that usually we think about buying some kind of a seminar. Maybe we're going to do some online training. We're going to watch this little 5 or 10 minute video segment, and then we're done. Or we take our 2,000 employees and we put them through some kind of a course, and everybody gets all excited. My experience in 34 years of training and development is that no matter who is doing the training, no matter how good the material is, we're dealing with humans. So what happens is no matter how excited a person gets, within about 6 months, the message tends to totally die. So I think if you want to create a service-driven workforce, you've got to have new material, fresh material, at the absolute minimum, at the minimum every 6 months. That's how you start to create a service culture. It's got to be new, and it's got to be different. It's a little bit like, let's take Dell, because they spend zillions of dollars on advertising. Nobody at Dell says, I tell you what, we have the most perfect commercial. Is all you got to do is let us develop this commercial for you, Michael Dell, and you will never have to run another commercial other than this one. You will save millions and millions of dollars a year on production. Dell would take that person and throw them out of their office building. Well, in training and development, we tend to listen to people. They come in and they say, look, I got the most incredible, the most perfect program. If you put your people through this, they're going to be perfect for the rest of their life. I have a belief that you get to have new material, fresh material, and it's got to be at least every 6 months. So ideally, if you want to create a service strategy, you want to create a service culture, you want a customer-driven workforce, you've got to have at least 40 hours a year of education and training. Get off the concept that there is one little magic course, one training program, one seminar you can buy. You've got to have something at the minimum every 6 months. Every year you have to teach leaders how to coach and how to lead, so it's driven internally. And then every year employees have to teach the skills of customer service. 5 principles I think you need to teach employees in order to care. One is you got to drive this concept emotionally. You can't do it intellectually. Intellectually, you have not a single person that does not know customer service is important. You got to drive it in the heart. So when the phone rings, somebody sends an email, somebody walks through the door, they say, "Wow, that's a customer," instead of, "Oh, it's a customer." And then secondly, we got to focus on skills and techniques. You see, 90% of all the complaints you get are because of the absence of common sense. It wasn't that I called it at 2 o'clock in the morning and nobody answered the phone. It's I called it 1 minute before closing and the person says, "I'm too busy, you're going to have to call back tomorrow." And then we've got to work on personal growth. We've got to build self-esteem. We've got to build self-worth so that people feel good about themselves. If people feel good about themselves, they communicate it on the job. If they don't feel good about themselves, they communicate it on the job. So we have to build the self-worth, build the self-esteem, get people to believe in themselves, see themselves as they can be. And then we have to work on how to handle complaints and irate customers because it ruins a person's day. So maybe they show up for their job and 5 minutes into their shift, somebody is on the phone screaming and hollering at them, and they are supposed to be friendly all day long. Nobody's trained them how to handle the problem. And then what they do is they say, "Just a moment, sir, let me find my boss." And they try to shift it up. And then the fifth thing is we got to work on teamwork. We got to create an environment where people enjoy working together. Now, I think there's 5 key design characteristics you need to use if you're going to either buy or create training programs that work, that change behaviors, that can help you create a customer-driven workforce. The bad news is that many executives do not like these 5 things. You see, most executives like things that are very dry, very dull, and very boring. Employees, they like to laugh. They like to have fun. Number 2, you got to hammer away at the basics and fundamentals. Executives, man, they love theory, and the more theory, the better. The more complicated, the better. Let me tell you what, you got 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds with a customer. You got to get your employees so that they are able to dance in front of that customer on the phone, through an email, in person, to wow that customer. And then the third is when you provide the training tool for the employee, make sure that the packaging of the material is awesome. In all the years, and I'm sure that many of you think I'm pretty young, but I've been at this stuff for 34 years now. So in all of those years, I found that when companies create and design their own internal learning systems, they work night and day to make sure the material they give a person looks like trash. I happen to believe if you give people material that looks like trash, they perceive it as trash. So the packaging is very important. And then next is you got to have experiential learning. That means 80% of the time is group discussion, group interaction, where people are able to argue and fight over the ideas instead of somebody watching a video. Yes. Okay. So you got to have a lot of group discussion, a lot of interaction, because your goal is to change behaviors and attitudes. Intellectually, you don't have a single employee that does not know that customer service is important. You got to drive it emotionally. And then the last item is you got to work on personal development. You got to build self-worth. You got to build self-esteem. You got to get people to see themselves as they can be, because if you want people to improve, if you want people to deliver exceptional customer service, you got to get people to believe in themselves. And the facts of life is that a whole lot of us have all sorts of personal problems that affect our performance on a daily basis. 6 key things I think you need to teach employees that want to deliver great customer service. Number 1, we've got to feel good about ourselves. If we don't feel good about ourselves, we will communicate it with our behavior every day. Number 2, we have to practice habits of courtesy. It doesn't take any longer to be nice. Third is we have to work on both verbal and nonverbal communication skills. A person can tell whether we're smiling, whether we're in person or on the phone. What's wrong with calling a person by their name, remembering their name, mastering their name? So simple, yet so complicated. Then we got to tune in. We got to really listen, anticipate. Give you a challenge. The next time you go to a restaurant and as you're leaving and the hostess typically says, "Sir, how was everything?" I want you to say, "Lousy." And I'll bet you 9 out of 10 times the hostess will say, "Oh, thank you, sir." Because they're not listening. So you got to tune in, you got to listen, you got to pay attention. And then the next is you got to perform. See, you could be the friendliest, most caring person in the world. You could smile, you could remember everybody's customers' names. I mean, they could think you walk on water, but if you don't do what you said you're going to do, you have lousy service.